what's going on everybody? It's etaprime back here again. Today we're going to be taking a look at the brand new Retroid Pocket 3 Plus. I've had a couple days to mess around with this, and it's definitely turning out to be one of my favorite smaller handhelds on the market right now. So first things first, yeah, personally I do think it was a bit early to release the 3 Plus version when only 2 months ago the 3 came out. A lot of people picked up the 3, and to tell you the truth, I mean, for what it is, it's still a great little handheld. And if you're into this ARM-based handheld scene, you know this is exactly how it goes. 2 months from now, we're going to get something even better than the 3 Plus. And really, if you just want to wait a little while until you can get something that emulates or plays all of the stuff you want, I would definitely go ahead and do that. Or use the Android phone you have in your pocket along with an attachable controller or even an Xbox or a PS4 controller. But if you're looking for something right now that's not going to completely break the bank, then the 3 Plus might be a great option for you. So with the 3 Plus, we do get a couple new color variants. Now you can get all of the other colors that we saw with the 3, but we've also got this atomic purple or clear purple, and they also offer a clear blue version. Now obviously I chose this atomic purple version, and it is a bit darker than original real atomic purple from Nintendo, but I think they did a pretty good job here. So if you're not familiar with these Retroid devices, basically what we have here is an Android-powered gaming handheld. We can run native Android games, emulation, cloud gaming, and streaming on it. This one just happens to have a 4.7-inch IPS display, and we've got our built-in controls here. Taking a look around the device, over here on the right-hand side, we've got our home button. Moving over to the left-hand side, we've got our volume rocker, so volume up and down. Along the bottom here, we've got dual stereo speakers, a micro SD card slot, USB Type-C for charging and syncing the device, and a 3.5mm headphone jack. And up top, we've got our start and select button, which is a little funky. I mean, you can definitely get used to it. It's been a bit odd having it up here, but there's not much more room on the face of the unit to add these. We've also got a micro HDMI port and our power button. Now, when it comes to the triggers here, these are not analog. They're either just going to be on or off. But we do have our shoulder buttons and triggers along the top. And when you compare this D-pad to other devices on the market, this does seem a bit smaller, but it actually works out quite well. We'll take a look at the performance in a little bit with a fighting game. But one thing that a lot of people might not like are the analog sticks. Now, personally, I don't mind these Switch-style analog sticks. We do have L3 and R3 here, so we can press down on them. And they work fine for what they are, but a lot of people just don't like the Switch style. They want a full size. But again, this is a very small and thin device. And really, there's not much going on around the back here, but since we've got that clear version, we can actually see inside of the unit. A lot of the view here is taken up by the battery, but I still think it's pretty cool to have a transparent handheld. And really, when you compare the overall visual difference between this, the 3 Plus, versus the original 3, there's no difference at all. But what makes this one much better are the internal specs, because with this, we've got a more powerful CPU. This is actually using the Unisoc Tiger T618. We've got 8 cores here. 2 Cortex A75 cores at 2 GHz, and we've also got 6 A55 cores at 2 GHz. For the GPU, we have the Mali G52 MC2 up to 850 MHz, and this CPU might sound familiar to some people because we've seen a lot of tablets release with it. In fact, Samsung's new Tab A8 uses the Tiger T618. When it comes to RAM, we've got 4 GB of LPDDR4X RAM, 128 GB of storage, and this is using eMMC 5.1 storage. We've also got AC Wi-Fi built in, so we can pick up that 5 GHz network, and it works great for streaming and cloud gaming. A 4.7-inch IPS display at 1334 by 750. It is 60 Hz with up to 450 nits of brightness. We've also got a 4500 mAh battery, and it's running Android 11. Now, the very first thing I wanted to take a look at was just the performance difference in synthetic benchmarks versus the Retroid Pocket 3, because this is offering much more power on the CPU and GPU side of things. First up, we've got Geekbench 5. On the left, we've got the 3 Plus. On the right, we've got the 3. Not much of a difference here when you compare the single core score, but multi, we get a really nice boost on the new 3 Plus. We're coming in at 1442 on the 3 Plus and 723 on the original 3. Moving over to a GPU benchmark, this is 3D Mark Slingshot, and yeah, this is where we're going to see a major jump in performance. On the original 3, for Slingshot, we got a 707. On the new 3 Plus, 2,247. And finally, I ran the Antutu benchmark, and as you can see on the 3, it's actually telling me that this might be cheating because that score is above normal. But on the 3 Plus, total score here, 231,681. On the original 3, even though it's saying we're cheating, we got a 160,845. And if we take a look at these individual scores, I mean, obviously the 3 Plus is beating out the original 3 in all of these areas that the benchmark tests. A lot of us expected this. We were supposed to get more power, and we definitely did. But now it's time to dive into the operating system. Then we're going to move over to some native Android gaming and wrap it up with some emulation on the new Retroid Pocket 3 Plus. Alright, so here it is. This is running Android 11. It's been really snappy so far, and setup is really easy. So there is kind of a little walkthrough process, and you can opt to download a bunch of emulators and apps if you want to, or you can keep it really bare bones. But remember, we do have Google Play pre-installed, so we can go ahead and download all of our favorite emulators and Android games right here. Now the launcher here might not be impressing anybody, but you could always install a third-party launcher, and this works out really well, but they've also got their own front end built in. The Retroid front end, I'm not exactly sure what they're calling it, but it makes it really easy to set up all of your favorite retro games. We can go with the dark theme or the light theme, and it'll automatically download metadata and artwork for us. We can customize the ROM directories, or we can have Retroid set it up for us. But yeah, I mean, I've actually really enjoyed this. Very simple, not much customization that we can do, but it works well. And really, when it comes down to it, best thing here is, I mean, we can get in and start playing our favorite retro games really easily. And again, we've got access to Google Play, or you could sideload your favorite front end if you want to. It's really up to you. We've got a ton to choose from nowadays. First thing I wanted to test out was a little bit of native Android gaming. And we've got Minecraft. I mean, it's definitely going to run really well on this device. But another thing I wanted to show you were a couple built-in software features that we have with the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus. If we swipe over from the right-hand side, we've actually got a bunch to choose from. On-screen FPS counter. We can clear the RAM out here. And one of my favorites is the on-screen key mapper. And this does come in handy for games that don't natively support controllers like Genshin Impact, or even games like Call of Duty Mobile that only support first-party controllers like Xbox and PlayStation controllers. With this, we can map the built-in controls to on-screen touch points and therefore basically use the built-in controls with any game. For instance, here we have Call of Duty Mobile. Now this does work with controllers on Android, but it has to be certain controllers, like the Xbox One controller or a PS4 controller. Third-party controllers just don't work out, but I've set this up with the on-screen key mapper, and we can use these built-in controls no problem at all. And by the way, yeah, Call of Duty Mobile actually runs pretty well on this. I've got the FPS up in the top left-hand corner. Every once in a while we get a dip down from 60, but it's really playable. And another game this on-screen key mapper comes in really handy for is Genshin Impact. Unfortunately, we just don't have controller support on Android with this game, no matter what controller you're using. But with this, we can set this up. It's totally customizable. We can also go through and change the sensitivity. And when it comes to Genshin Impact performance on this device, it actually runs pretty decently at 30 or 25 FPS, but we have to go to the lowest settings here. Now from the menu, we can set this even as low as 25 FPS, which is probably what you really want to do so we don't get those major dips. But you know, it does try its hardest to run this at a constant 30. Before we move over to emulation, I did want to test out some cloud gaming and game streaming. Now we've got Wi-Fi 5 built in here with the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus, so we can pick up that 5 GHz network. I've got some Xbox cloud gaming going with Gamepass right now, Forza Horizon 5. And as long as you have a decent internet connection, you can actually have a great time with cloud gaming on this. If you want to use GeForce Now, it also works just as well. But I gotta say, when it comes to playing PC games on a device like this, I personally like to stream from my own PC, either using Moonlight or my favorite Steam Link. So with Steam Link here, I can actually do 120 FPS, and this really comes down to your internet connection in the house, your router speed and everything like that. But just on this initial network test, we're at 100 megabits, and I've actually been able to set this up to beautiful quality and 120 FPS. Now, this is going to be streaming from my own PC in the house, so if your PC can handle whatever game you want to play, you could definitely stream it to the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus. Here's Spider-Man Miles Morales streaming from my own gaming PC. I've set it to 720p because really that's the resolution of the screen we have here. It's a little over 720, but I've got this at very high settings and we are running it at 120 FPS on that PC and streaming it right over to the Pocket. And this is actually one of my favorite use case scenarios with the Pocket 3 or the 3 Plus here. I've had a really great time with the 3 and streaming, but you know, really when it comes down to it, these are marketed as retro gaming devices. So let's test out some emulation. First up, we've got some Dreamcast using Redream. This runs really well. We're actually upscaled to 1920 by 1440. We don't need to go this high. We could save some power and battery life by just taking it down one step, but I wanted to see if it would handle it. And yeah, I mean, even Crazy Taxi 2 here is running at full speed. And while we're here with Dreamcast, I figured we could give this Dpad a test with Marvel vs. Capcom 2. So it's definitely not the best D-pad in the world, but yeah, I mean, it does work with these fighting games. I usually have no issues whatsoever pulling off these special moves. Now, one thing I'd love to see in kind of a next revision would be just a little bit of a larger D-pad, but yeah, it works great. Now it's time to move over to some PSP emulation, and you know, if this device wasn't anything else, it's a great PSP emulation device. I mean, this could replace a PSP, no problem at all. It offers excellent performance, and right now we're at 4x resolution, no other hacks on. We've even got filtering set to X16, Vulkan back in, and I've got Jak and Daxter running here at full speed. This originally ran at 30 FPS on the PSP. You could use a hack to unlock it to 60, and it would still handle it just fine at 4x resolution. And of course, there are easier to emulate games, and in those cases we can actually go up even higher, but next up we've got Tekken 6, which I consider a mid-range game. Didn't change any of the settings here. We're still at 4x resolution using that Vulkan back in. We're at full speed. Now, like I said, I consider this a mid-range game, and we can even go up to 4x with this one, but there's one more we need to test, and of course, that's going to be God of War. Either Chains of Olympus or Ghost of Sparta, and with these harder to emulate games, we do have to take the resolution down, but we don't have to go all the way down. We're actually at 2x right now, and it's handling this game like a champ. I mean, you know, if you do any kind of PSP emulation on these lower-end ARM handhelds, you know how hard this one can be to run. So seeing it running at 2x resolution on the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus is really awesome. And sort of impressive when you consider these handhelds, but what was even more impressive was the Gamecube emulation. So I'm going to go ahead and say it, I wouldn't pick this up specifically for Gamecube emulation, but there are games that are going to run at full speed. I'm using the Dolphin MMJR2 emulator, and we're at 0.5x resolution, so we're not quite there even at native. But we've got Sunshine here with the Vulkan back in, running great. Now this originally ran at 30 FPS, but this doesn't mean that every GameCube game is going to run at full speed, because when I went over to Auto Modelisto, which is a harder one to run, it fell right on its face. I also tested F-Zero, kind of the same thing here, but even Mario Kart runs great using MMJR2. Again, we're only at 0.5x resolution, so we're a little under native, but given the smaller screen, it still looks pretty decent. If I had to put a number on it, I'd say about 30% of the GameCube library would be playable on this device. And it kind of drops down with the Wii library because I really didn't have great luck with this. Even something like Sonic Colors didn't run well. But there are Wii games we can emulate on the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus. I was actually really impressed. Going into this, I didn't expect to get this kind of performance out of it. And I want to say it again, I wouldn't pick this up specifically for GameCube and Wii emulation, but just know if you do have your hands on one, there are games we can play. And the final thing I wanted to test here was some PS2 emulation using Aether SX2. Here's Crash Bandicoot, Wrath of Cortex, definitely an easy one to emulate. We're at 1x res, Vulkan back in, and we're in safe mode. So once you start this emulator up, we can go to unsafe, which is going to give us a lot of hacks and cycle skips. So I have some frame skipping going on. But with these first 3 games I tested, I didn't have to go to unsafe mode at all. And we're at 1x res. They look great on this little screen here. And a lot of the easier to emulate PS2 games are going to be fully playable. But kind of just like GameCube and Wii, you're going to run across those harder to emulate games that just don't work very well on this device. And right now, here's Gran Turismo 4. We're at 0.5 resolution, Vulkan back in, and we're in unsafe mode. So it's not going to hit that 60 FPS mark. We've got a lot of cycle skipping going on. It is using a lot of hacks in the background to try to get this to run a bit smoother. But as soon as we come around one of these corners here, you'll see it just kind of dip on down. Now, one thing I do want to mention about this game is it's not a super hard one to emulate. Even the Snapdragon 720 can do this at 1x with no problem at all. But we are working with a lower end chip, and a game like God of War 2 will need a lot of those cycle skips going on. And some people might be totally fine with this. I mean, they might not mind playing it like this, but personally I would kind of stay away from it just because I hate frame skip. And of course, going through and spending time on each one of these games and finding the perfect settings, you could always come up with better performance, but it will take time. So overall, I'm really digging the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus. It's not the most powerful device on the market, and if you wanted something with a bit more power, I would go with the Odin Pro, but this is coming in at $150, and it's readily available. I mean, they usually ship out within a couple days. Another one you could go with if you want to spend a lot more money is the Logitech G Cloud. It does offer better emulation performance. Or you could just go all out and do a Steam Deck at $399, but at that $150 price tag, I really do think that this is a great little device. And in this video, we didn't see really any low-end emulation. If you wanted to do some N64, some NES, some SNES, even Nintendo DS, it's going to run it just fine. I wanted to go with those harder to emulate systems, and yeah, I mean, Dreamcast, PSP, Sega Saturn, even I'd say around 30% of the Gamecube library is going to be playable on this. Plus, like you saw in the video, we've even got some PS2 emulation out of the way on this device. I've still got a little testing that I need to do. Keep an eye on my community section. My battery life test will be up in the next day or so. I actually wanted to cycle through this a few times just to find out exactly how much battery life we're getting out of it. But right now, it's looking around 5 hours of total straight gameplay, and that's not bad at all for a device like this. So yeah, if you're interested in learning more, maybe picking one of these up, I will leave a couple links in the description. And if there's anything else you want to see running on this, let me know in the comments below. Another thing I'd like to know from you is, are you going to upgrade to this if you picked up the original Pocket 3? Or if you skip that one, are you going to wait on something else or get the 3 Plus? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And like always, thanks for watching.